As software engineer, we work as a team. Yeah, it's kind of it's kind of rare where where you work isolated. But most of the time, you work as a team, and not just within your team. We often work with other team as well. So it's like we collaborate with teams that outside of our organizations or within our group, or even external teams that is the, let's say, a vendor or third party. If you work with open source, you will see this even more common when you work with different teams that maintain different package, and the collaboration doesn't stop there. And sometimes you have to go and talk to them in order to get they develop some sort of features that your team needs. So the collaboration with other teams are very, very important. And let's say, for example, you have a a design review, and you are walking them through the whole review architectures, and you're very confident about it, because you are the one who do the architecture, you design the system. So you're going through the every step of the plan, and you understand the system very well. You want to explain to them what your proposal and the reason behind it very clearly. And of course, with you, it makes completely sense because you've been working on it for weeks, for days, and it just couldn't go wrong. You have everything correct, right? But then at some point, because the more, let's say, unless you're talking to yourself, the more people you're talking to, there will be someone that disagree with your solutions, or someone that want to get some to how say, to give you some feedback. That's normal. That's part of growth. So your first reactions to this would probably be, okay, let me explain to you again. Or trying to explain it slower, or find a different way, try to convince the person that this is what it's supposed to be, or to make it clear. But in your mind, you probably would tell you things. It's written there, it's right there, it's so obvious. What can you understand? Right? But still, sometimes even after you give the feedback like that, it still didn't land, and still didn't get into an agreement between you two, between you three, or the whole audience. And at this point, it's not about the communication problem, because you also have the document, you also trying to explain very clearly, and obviously it's just something that didn't click between each other. And yeah, you feel very frustrated. I am very frustrated, by the way. Like, maybe something is wrong with my explanation. Maybe something is wrong with my reason. Well, the thing is, it's not always the problem of communication, or not always the problem of your explanation. It's something, sometimes it's just because you two have a different context. So let's break it down into understand why context matter, in why sometimes alignments are not that easy as this look like for us. My name is Maya, and this is New with Maya podcast, and this is what we are going to talk about in this episode. Okay, so let's take it slow first. When something didn't make it clear to us, or didn't register to us. Let's say if someone explained to you about some concept, or talk about some solution about a problem that you have no idea about. So the first default assumption is that you probably would say, I need to check, or I need to understand it better. um, and then the person who actually tried to talk to you about it saw that you're not really register. He would start to think, maybe the way I'm trying to explain is not good enough, so let's try a different way. And trying like that, right? And sometimes that's why we have the whole thing about interview questions like explain promise to a person like you explain the concept to a 5 years old person, and you may look at that as something funny, but it have some logic behind it, because if you cannot really explain it clearly and in a simple way that make a kid to understand what you're talking about, so how do you explain other people? How do you expect other people to understand what are you talking about? So try to make it clear, concise, and straightforward, and don't use all the terms that is not in English at all. Something like that. Sometimes, by the way, sometimes it works. I mean, most of the time it's true, because sometimes it's just a matter of clarity. So it's like when we talk about problem solving and you didn't give the context to the person, what are you talking about or what exactly you're trying to solve? Clarity, the person would not be able to understand why are you keep going on about performance, something like that. And of course, the way you deliver, like say problem, a solution, breakdown, step by step solutions, structure matter, right? Assumptions is what we deliver based on what the information you we were given. For example, most of the time when I receive an investigation ticket or a support ticket, they're asking for my help, or a bug ticket from customer service, and the ticket doesn't have any steps to reproduce, or the title doesn't explain clearly what the problem about. I would have no idea to help further, because I won't be able to make assumptions. I won't be able to understand why this happened, what exactly they're talking about. And usually that's why in the ticket template, you always see that they wrote there very clearly, please stay step by step of how to reproduce the problem, what environment, what version of the app, so on and so forth. Other than that, you as the person, as the engineer, you won't be able to come up with your own assumption, right? And the other person will not understand why you cannot help them with that, or why this is not considered, this ticket is there and there's no solution for that. um yeah, so the way we communicate, the way we explaining things does really matter, because without the clear communication, without clarity, without a structured description, things it will be hard. Things will be very, very hard for collaboration. And this is not just about one team. This is applied to every team, every single engineer. The more senior you are, the more you understand that you have to find a way to explain the problem better. And that's part of what you call ownership or responsibility, hidden work that no one tell you about, and it's not a skill that is easy to master as well. Um, and explanations really, really can give you a good starting point. But again, there's also a limit for good explanation can solve. Because when you try to explain a problem, no matter how clear the explanations is done, it does assume one thing very important, that everyone is the same level. Okay, so when you explain about performance issues of a bugs to a person in your team, or to a teammate, or to another person from the other team, that why this one have the latency of 100 or 1000, sorry, 100 seconds, something like that, and why that and this happened because you forgot to turn on this, or this happened on this part. So when you're trying to explain something like that to a person from your team or from the another team, it doesn't really matter. You kind of assume that the person is in the same scale with you. The person have the same knowledge. The person know what you're talking about. Let's say I once upon the time I tried to explain to someone in my team that when the upload image take really long time to return the response and why we need to solve it. And then the person look at me very blankly and say, why do we need to care about that? Isn't it in the server side? Why did it have anything to do with client side? Um, yeah, so that's the thing. When you try to explain that, you kind of think that people understand the system the way you understand the system. People prioritize, have the same prioritization like you have because you care about the front end performance. But in fact, that's never true. I mean, almost never true. Because if you are taking two engineers looking at the same problem, let's say I'm looking at the problem, uh, looking at performance problem, but I'm from more about front end. Then I look at the performance from the point of view of a front end engineer. Then I will see why there's a latencies of the loading screen or why this request and after it's respond from the server, it take really long time to resolve on the UI, something like that. But the backend person will look at it and say things different, to see things different. Or someone from DevOps look at the problem of performance and try to understand what are you talking about? Why do we care about performance on the client at all or in the server at all? Something like that, right? And and maybe someone just don't think that it's matter on. I can tell you all of this are valid because we're talking about looking at the one single problem from different angle, from different background, from different aspects. All of this is valid. All the argument is valid. It's just that when you talk to each other, you won't be able to find the agreement or the alignment in the middle if you talking in two. It doesn't match because you're talking about two different things. And all of this based on your experience, previous experience, whether you already encountered this before or whether you work with it before and so on. So when the disalignment or disagreement happens, in this case, it doesn't mean that one of them is wrong. It doesn't mean that the front end engineer is completely wrong, or the back end engineer doesn't make sense, or the DevOps doesn't make sense, or a junior, the morning, and so on and so forth. It's just that we have different contexts. We come from different background. We using different experience to speak what we think about the problem. And like we always know, the context is not visible and not transparent. And because a different person have different context, it's not common either. It's hard to have a common context without sharing it to each other. So when we talk about context, I mean, we heard about that a lot. So it's really like when you heard about someone say, oh, it depends. That's actually talking about the context. It's really abstract. What does context mean? What is context? In theory, it's very. I mean, in theory, it's very straightforward. It's like a background of things. It's like a things. It provides the story of the big picture of the problem. It's very concrete, right? So the context in what you've been working before, the context is also something that you saw that is failed before, the similar attributes, similar characteristic of the problem that can lead one to fail, and then you saw this in this specific problem, then you okay, this may be the same because have the sharing the same characteristic or something like the constraint. A lot of things that can a lot of things together will build into one thing called context. So context is not something like a single piece of paper right there, a single piece of information. It actually the whole structure of the information, a whole, how to say, collection, a combination of different informations to build into a whole pictures or a whole background that the issue you are talking about is relying on. So let's say, for example, if you spend time building some sort of API that returns some sort of data, and then when you saw the data request, uh, kind of similar every time, but then it took some time to query for data and return the response, you will be more cautious about or more into optimization, catching, or doing some sort of optimization on the backend side to make sure that we can handle a lot of API code at the same time, or talking about cross team dependency. Let's say you work with another team that doing a component library, so we depended on that. Then you may want to try to reduce the breaking change that can happen to this component that break your implementation, and so on and so forth. So when people disagree about discussions, what really happened in here is that we actually bring in different versions of the system into the room. So even if we are talking about the same code file, it can be that some of us are having a clearer context, some of us not having a clearer context, some of us having a different context. And that's why even though the explanation is very well defined, the technical design is very well defined, we still didn't get into the agreement. And if the context are not shared and did not make visible for everyone in the room to understand the same context that everyone have, then alignment become very, very hard, right? Because we want to make some changes to the reactivity system, which is the reactivity library that maintained by another team. We present our solutions that very specific to our component, very specific to our product, that the code lie inside their code. And we present to them, and they didn't agree with what we present. Even though our solution works and it's like 5 lines of code, they still didn't agree on that. And no matter how much we try to explain, they say, yes, we understand what you're doing, but this is not good. And that is when, as senior engineer, this is where we have to step in to try to approach, trying to straighten the context. So let's say early before in your career, when you are just a junior or mid-level engineer, alignment will be more like try to convince other people to agree with you, right? You explain the solutions and you defend your reasoning. You try to provide as much information of what drive you to build this infrastructure, and then you also explain the trade-off that you're making, of course, and then you say, okay, let's just agree. And you try to convince people to align with you, try to say that this is okay to move forward or not okay to move forward. And if it doesn't, then you feel like you need to explain further. You need to be more detailed. But the more senior you become, the thing you understand is it's not about pushing for solutions to get approved. It's understand why there's a pushback, why there's a disagreement, why there's a difference between you and another person from another team or from the same team. That it, even though your solution makes sense and it works and it doesn't cause a regression, maybe they still don't agree with you. So now, instead of asking to yourself, how do I make these people agree with me? You start to wonder, what did they know that I don't? Or what context am I missing? The one thing that I learned over the time is that I learned how to say, I don't know. I learned to admit to myself that I'm not the one who have all the answer, and that's okay. That's totally fine. I don't need to be the one with all the answer. Actually, when it's harder to say I don't know and learn from and ask people for more context than just say, yeah, I think I know about something like that. It's because I don't know. It takes a lot of courage, right? Sometimes you need to learn how to ask the questions that can help you break the ice or unblock yourself from understanding where the other person coming from. So so you you have to you move from the mindset of trying to convince someone to accept your idea to understand why that what context did you miss and why did the person didn't accept what I'm saying. And it's not about win or lose things, it's about trying to clear up the context, trying to make it more visible for yourself. So the truth is, alignment is rarely a moment, okay? It's not single explanation that make it work. It's usually the whole process. It's like sometimes it have to be like you start to slow down the discussion. Sometimes you start to like trace back um, and start to ask question or start to repeat what the other person is saying. It's like walking through their thinking with them, with you, and then you start to clearer, like ask question along the way. Or sometimes it's just to understand that you both are optimizing for different things. You are talking to completely different concern, and it's fine. There's no one perfect answer here. So um, so one of the things that it helped me from this whole alignment process is that have to stop assuming that disagreement means miscommunications or mean that the other person are not are trying to intervene with my work or trying to be neutral, something like that. So it's not about miscommunication. It's just about that the context isn't shareable, is not clear enough. I need to make sure that that context is being shared. It's clear, it's there, it's provided. Just something that I haven't seen yet. So in back to the example about the bug solution that we provide, the feedback we received is that they were afraid of regression. So what we did is we asked question what it meant, and then along the way everything is clear because he was meant that the final solution will require some sort of data structure changes. So if we put our solution right now, it will work for them. But then if we ever going to implement the final solution, the right solutions in the next release, and remove our temporary solution, then they will have regression because the data structure change and they don't have it because they still work with our temporary solution. And that means that with them, they will have regression. How are we going to solve that issue? So we need to also find a solutions that can also make sure that that our customer, the one who received the solution, would not have any regression unattended. So that's clear, right? So that's help you that shift to make alignment not about persuading the other party to agree on your solutions, or to disagree on something, or to push back on something. It's not about getting to agreement. Alignment is about getting more context, getting as much context, getting to know why the other person is thinking this way. What do I miss? I'm sorry, what do I miss? So it's like admitting to yourself, I don't know. Can you tell me what I didn't know? Maybe that can help me to get a better solution, or to see that I didn't I didn't think through enough. It helped to grow, right? So, but it's always start with being how you present yourself. It's always start to be how curious you are. So you need to be curious enough. You also need to be more relaxed, more letting it go, and accept that the other person is not trying to wash you off. It's not trying to give you trouble. It's trying to help you to not step into some sort of unseen situation in the future. So you have to also become less defensive. And yes, that's also leads to one thing. Alignment is not easy. Yes, it's not easy. Sometimes it's like it's feel like compromise. It's like people always say, we need to align on that. We need to compromise because we don't have enough capacity for this one, or we need to remove this or that. We need to push back on this, something like that. But it's not just saying. It's much harder than that. It's not because we don't communicate well. Even if you have all the documentation or the infrastructure, diagram, everything is so clear and so straightforward. Different people have different experience, different background. We see things differently, and we are not from the same place. Different experience. Yeah, we all know that, right? And once you start understanding that, disagreement would not be just disagreement, or would not feel more personal like it sounds used to be. It it also not feel like a problem now when you start to switch your mindset from alignment about how alignment work. Then we start to understand that it's not about a problem. It's more about getting more context. So if next time something feel obvious to you, let's say some problem, some solution feel really obvious, even though the solutions can be given by an AI and sound very like straightforward, you can start thinking to yourself, what context is making it obvious, and what context that may be missing. To think about it, like when we work with Cloco or Cursor, when we ask it to fix a problem, Copilot would give you a very good solution that you look at it, you say, it makes sense, right? But it doesn't really means that it really makes sense all the way, because the AI doesn't have all the context like you have. And AI doesn't have all the context of what can go wrong in the future, like someone that maybe not there, that didn't see how the AI works. That's why we have on this plan review, code review, and of course, as the AI user, you also have to review the solution and make sure you test all the way, right? Okay, and that's what we're talking about today. Feel free to share this if you have